We lost petition remonstrance at that time, which meant we had to wait a year. And then we came back with a project that was significantly different. Rather than having a new high school, the idea of having a new junior high school, adding on to the high school, both sides met on that, and our community said, that's right for us.
Okay.
I think similar things happen throughout the state, that you get your key stakeholders together, your community has an opportunity to say yay or nay to that.
Pull up a chair, bring the vision you're chasing. Look over the blueprints, years in the making. From planning to progress and growth that will last. Come on, let's build and enable at the inside table. At the inside table.
Hey, my name's Tim. Thank you for clicking on this today and listening to us. We've just been happy to have conversations around real estate development and construction has been my passion for years. So here at Veritas, we're also passionate about that. And so what you're going to hear is just some general conversations that we've had about certain topics within this framework over the last several months. We hope you enjoy these. We hope you came to learn today. If you need some more information, we'll get you some information at the end of this as we close this thing out. But enjoy this conversation. Hey, really excited today to have Dr. Harold Olin from Greenfield Central Schools to join us. Dr. Olin, this is part of one of the series that we're doing within our podcast. We're trying to bring in really, really important people.
All right, you lost me right there.
But really, really influential people in their communities. And why you may not think that all the time, I do feel, as I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years, that you have a tremendous influence over the school that you lead, the school system that you lead. And I do believe that leadership is influence and influence is leadership. And so today we want to talk about your journey, a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today. I want to talk about some leadership challenges. What are you seeing coming in schools? Those types of things today. So let's start just by having you introduce yourself to our team and the people that might be listening to this and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Well, I come from a long line of educators. Grandfather was a basketball coach, teacher, school administrator. My father taught for 29 years and New Palestine, taught in IPS before that. Married to an educator who had two parents who were educators. So, I mean, it's really what I know. So I started as a social studies teacher, started in Warren Central High School, did that for 2.5 years. And then I went to Mount Vernon Middle School, where I taught. I really wanted to teach middle school social studies, wanted to coach basketball and golf, was loving that. About that time, we had our second child, and that kind of sped up my career path. I always wanted to jump into school administration at some point, but I was 28 years old, wrapping up a master's degree and started looking for a job. And that journey led me to Mishawaka, Indiana, of all places. Of course, I'm 28 years old. I've got a lot of gray hair now, but imagine me at 28 years old. I probably looked like I was probably 20 at that time. So I interviewed a number of places, but Mishawaka was where they first took that chance on me. I loved it up there. But I think having the only grandchildren on both sides of the family, there was this pull to come back to Central Indiana. And so after 1 year, I had an opportunity to come back to Greenfield Central. I've technically been there for 26 years now, which is really hard to believe, right after Y2K to come down here. I was an assistant principal at Greenfield Middle School for a year, where I also played the role of an athletic director. And then just because of some circumstances we had, I was given the opportunity to be an elementary principal at Eden Elementary, which I did that for 2 years. 2 years into that, we had something happen in one of our other elementary schools where the superintendent thought we need somebody internal who can kind of quiet the ship. So I was a principal at Harris for a couple of years. My passion was always middle school. So we had 2 middle schools at that time. We had a guy who had been there for almost 30 years as a principal. He retired, so I had the opportunity to go to Maxwell Middle School. 5 years into that, Greenfield Central was growing on a very steep trajectory. We'd grown for 17 straight years. So we merged our 2 middle schools into a junior high setting, and I got to lead that. I opened that in 2010. I think that was the first time I'd done a lot of work with Jerry Rolfson on that and the design of that. But after leading that school for 4 years, our superintendent retired, and I jumped into that superintendent role in 2014. And here we are 2026. So that's really my journey from an educator standpoint, the roles that I played up to becoming superintendent.
That's awesome, man. A great story. I think it's pretty rare still that somebody's in the same school district for that long.
Yeah.
I know we've got a couple of clients. I have one that just retired up in Michigan who had been literally in the same school district from basically first grade teacher all the way through superintendent, for the last 28 years. So congratulations on that. I know you hopefully anticipate a few more years, right? Continue your career there. So talk to me a little bit about that leadership journey that you took. I said earlier that leadership is influence, right? And I
John
think
Maxwell's always said that.
That's kind of one of his kind of key things, right? But you obviously sat in a lot of different roles as you kind of worked your way through the system, and then all of a sudden became, a superintendent now 12 years ago or so.
Mhm.
So, what do you think it is that you learn in each one of those various stops along the way? And I think too, I want to caveat this question a little bit because I think today's generation wants this instant success.
Yeah.
They want to be at the top
Right
rather
away, right out of
immediately and not
college.
take these steps. And so I think it's important sometimes to hear people took steps to get where they are into these roles of leadership. So help us understand what you learned along the way that helped you become the superintendent that you are today.
I guess I'd back up a little bit. I think it's important as a leader to never ask your people to do something you wouldn't do yourself or you haven't done yourself. So therefore, having gone through all those steps, I know what it's like to be a
Sure.
classroom teacher, to do the planning, to handle discipline, to do the grading. As an assistant principal, that's a really critical role where oftentimes you do play. You have to take care of a lot of the discipline side of things, with whether it's kids misbehaving in class or attendance, and having phone calls with parents that aren't always pleasant. I
Yeah.
think it's important to have had that step. And then as a principal, you really step into a position where you're seen as the instructional leader, where you have to know a lot about instruction, how to maximize what's happening in the classroom. So I think those steps are important for anybody to take as a superintendent. Now, one step that I did miss, I went right from the principalship to the superintendency. You will see that's probably not the most common
Yeah,
path. Most
yeah.
people will take a job at the district level, whether that's a curriculum director or assistant superintendent or some kind of director position. I skipped that step. And I will tell you that was probably it was eye-opening for me. The amount of my time that was focused on things that weren't necessarily school related. And let me
Mm.
qualify that a little bit. As a school principal, I never left the building. You're there
Sure.
half hour before kids get
Yeah.
there, well into the evening after kids leave, and you feel like you're responsible for everything that happens in that school. As a school superintendent, I was really shocked by the amount of requests I had on my time. I've been a longtime board member with the Chamber of Commerce. I did that for 9 or 10 years. Economic development for Hancock
Mhm.
County, I've done that. The Community Foundation, I've been on the Community Corrections Board. I mean, just roles like that as a school principal, you don't have opportunities for influence in that circle. So I wish I'd had a little bit of somebody to tell me that. It's
Yeah.
not really something you pick up on, even in all the schooling that I've done. Now, I will tell you, it is one of the most rewarding pieces of the job that I get to do, because yes, my primary role is to make sure that Greenfield Central Schools is a great place for learning for our students and that it's a great place for our staff. But schools play a much bigger role in what is happening in a community, with the roles that I do play on economic development, the Community Foundation, those two in particular.
Okay. I love the kind of what the learning process and learning journey there. And again, I think that's valuable for people to hear that it doesn't just happen overnight. And now that you are superintendent, you can sneak away and do podcasts on occasion.
On occasion.
And part of that. Let's shift a little bit and start talking about schools in general. And there's been some things that have happened in the last year that have begun to really affect how you guys are thinking about growth and projects and capital needs and those types of
Yes.
things. So share a little bit with our audience about what that big event was, and then how you guys are working to overcome that a little
Well,
bit.
Senate Enrolled Act 1 from 2025 was a game changer on school finance. It plays out in two different places. First of all, it really reduces the amount of dollars we pull in the operations fund, because that's based on your assessed valuation, and the changes that the General Assembly made with that bill it impacts that, and it impacts it over a 6-year period of time from
Hmm.
2025 to 2031. It sounds great. And look, as a guy who turns 55 here in 6 weeks, seniors getting some benefits on
I knew you were
your
older than me. I wasn't sure
yeah,
how
yeah,
much
you
older,
knew I was
but
a
yeah.
lot older. You just
Okay.
wanted to say that in the podcast,
Hmm.
didn't you? But some of those credits that homeowners will get will be helpful to seniors and for veterans and a few other groups. That is not a bad thing. Um, what people don't understand is for a credit of about $300, which is what it works out to be, it puts a huge burden on schools to
Sure.
make that happen. Now, that's where I think being prudent with your finances prior to 2025 was important. And we've always tried to be lean in terms of the administrative model that we have, that we don't have too many extras that are out there so we can put our education fund dollars into the classroom. The state puts out metrics that they want you
Hmm.
to hit. 65% of your education fund should be going to the classroom. That includes salary and benefits. And we've well exceeded that. We're into the 70% on that. So I think it's important for corporations to do that. And if they weren't doing that, this was an eye opener for them.
Imagine.
Because if you don't have the funds in your operations fund, you're having to pull from that education fund. So again, it's important that you had a strong foundation in what you were doing in both the education fund and operations fund. And I can tell you the other side to that, because we've only talked about the
Please. Yeah.
first portion, that's the operations fund, which this has made very difficult to have the resources to maintain parking lots, boilers, chillers, utility rates are going out the
Hmm.
roof, as well as insurance costs. So having the ability to cover those costs is important. But the other side of SEA one that has made it difficult has been on the borrowing side, and trying to limit schools to only have referendums on the even numbered years.
Hmm.
That's a big deal for a lot of corporations that have a lot of capital needs that you can't cover from your operations fund. And I would tell you, many of us have tried to cover some of those bigger expenses, boilers, chillers,
Yeah.
roofs, parking lots, with some general obligation bonds, which I suppose we will continue to do that. But those are small bonds that we do that we pay out over just a few years of time. Not every school corporation has the ability to do that. So again, us having a cash balance, us having a rainy day fund has been helpful for us to do that. We've also taken a look at the structure that we have. We have 8 schools in Greenfield Central. And I mentioned this earlier.
Hmm.
We grew for 17 straight years in the 90s and the first part of the new millennium. Well, we peaked in 2011.
Okay.
So over the last 15 years, we've actually declined a couple hundred students, which takes us back to when we opened that junior high school that I mentioned in 2010. Had we not done, had we known we were going to max out 1 year later, we probably wouldn't have done that.
Okay.
But we didn't have a crystal ball to know that. I think the board made the right decision in 2007 and 2008 to do that. My point being, we have more facilities than we need right now.
Okay.
So we did a big presentation with our community after having some things in our board meetings to let them know that we're going to find some efficiencies by repurposing a school. We have 2 intermediate schools right now that were grades 4, 5, and 6. This year, we moved our 4th graders back to the elementary school. So now we have 2 intermediate schools that have about 315 kids apiece. We're going to put them together next year. That'll free up a building for us. The following year, the fall of 27, we will actually combine 2 of our elementary schools. Again, we have plenty of capacity to do that. And so by having less space to operate, custodians,
That's right.
fewer of those, put your set points back in places that you don't have to have optimal temperatures. There are things that we're doing to become more efficient. And I can tell you, just in our own county, New Palestine Schools is looking to do the very same thing.
Yeah.
So I think this is what it's caused school leaders to do, to look at things a little bit differently. Now, what I can tell you on this podcast, and I don't mind telling everybody, we mentioned this in our November program with the community, we started looking at this before SEA 1.
Right.
So that put us in a position that we were already looking for those efficiencies. So I feel like we're in a pretty good place. Of the 292 public school corporations around the state, that's not a story you're going to hear a lot.
Sure.
This has been a lot more shocking to some of my peers.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that question specifically because I've heard from different school districts that it affects different districts differently.
Yeah.
What are some of those factors
If you're
that
not a growing school corporation, that's going to impact you
okay,
because if
negatively? Okay.
negatively, because you're going to receive less dollars in the
Okay.
education fund. When you have less dollars in the education fund, that's less that you can do to
Sure.
provide support other places. So growing districts, I mean, if you're Westfield, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But even a place, the one that I think shocked many people in central Indiana was Hamilton Southeastern. I mean, Fishers, you can look at that community and it is still growing.
Right.
Greenfield, still growing,
Right.
but our school populations
Mm.
are shrinking a little bit. So if you're not a growing school district, you are going to have some additional pressures on you.
Okay. You also mentioned in your explanation of SCA 1 that it's basically a 6-year window.
Yeah.
Help us understand our listeners. Does that credit then fall off in 6 years and it goes back to normal, or is it to be renewed in 6 years? Like what's the language you guys are tracking there?
The credit should stay in place. However, I think our assessed valuation will start to grow
again.
and cover
Okay.
that gap after 2031. Now, again, when this came out in 2025, many of us started looking to professionals to support us with this because we can't look at that tax data at the parcel level. So,
Sure.
for us, I'll throw it out there. Policy analytics has been very helpful to us, and many school corporations have chosen to use them. We spent a lot of time talking with Stiefel and Ice Miller,
Mhm.
other finance partners that we have to help us fully understand what this impact is going to be. I can tell you we had a meeting last week with policy analytics, and the good news was for us, and everybody's story is different, I think it's going to be a little less impactful than what we thought it was going to be even 6 months ago. I mean, it's not going to hurt. It's
Right.
just not going to hurt quite as much.
On August 13th, the Veritas Group is hosting the Insight Summit 2026 at the Alexander Hotel in downtown Indianapolis. This is a one-day in-person gathering designed for mayors, city and county officials, planners, engineers, economic development leaders, and community advocates who are actively shaping Indiana's future. The day is built around real-world insight from Veritas Group-led projects across the state, focusing on what's actually working in infrastructure, public space development, and economic growth. Whether you're driving capital projects, navigating growth challenges, or building strategic partnerships, attendees will leave with actionable insights, expanded networks, and a clearer vision for delivering lasting community impact. Learn more and register at theveritasgroup.com/insight.
Let's dive into this capital project discussion because I think you guys are a little bit different in that you're trying to consolidate and kind of save space right now and kind of think through how do we do that. Well, other schools that we know of are still trying to find locations for new elementary
Yes.
schools and different things as their districts are growing. You mentioned Westfield. There's others in the area that are still growing. So in Michigan, everything is done on referendum, right? So any major capital project is done on a referendum. When I say major, I think it's over like $500,000. It's going to be done on a
Ooh,
referendum.
That's a low threshold.
So what happens a lot is they end up deferring a lot of capital projects until they get a kind of a critical mass and they can go one time to their voters say, hey, we really need to do this stuff. And so they end up with 10 years sometimes of deferred maintenance of things that should have been done a long time ago, but weren't able to do so. So all of a sudden they're doing $100 million, bond referendum versus what could have probably been solved. Not the whole thing, but part of that could have been solved with $1 million here, or a geo bond here, or whatever those things are. Do you see a point? I mean, obviously we're kind of at the point now where a lot of these larger projects have to go to referendum, right? We're going to add on to the property taxes the capital needs that are required in order to do projects. Where do you see that conversation moving forward in the state of Indiana?
I think as long as they continue to give us the option for geo bonds, many of us will do that. I mean, nobody wants to defer that type of maintenance. I mean, to take care of a parking lot,
Right.
those are really big numbers. Yeah. We're going to pay over $800,000 for a chiller at our junior high school that we opened in 2010. Those are expenses you cannot cover out of your operations fund. You couldn't do that really before SCA 1. Virtually impossible now.
Okay. So we're just wondering if the market's going to shift to a lot of referendum discussions on capital projects.
Well, and we're certainly we heard numbers as high as 75 corporations that might be, that were at least investigating referendums. I think that number will probably be maybe 60% of that, what we'll see in the fall. But that's a significant increase
Sure.
from where we've been over the last few years.
And on top of that, you said the new bill limits
Every
it to
2
every 2
years.
years.
So
you
you're
can't
going to do it
even
now
right.
versus waiting to 28.
And it just has to, it has to be an even number of years, right? So it does hit the election cycles and does some other things and kind of creates those opportunities for larger turnouts, hopefully at the polls is kind of what we're looking for at the end of the day. So
But
let's
I'll
please, yeah.
mention here, I mean, we did a project with you with our auditorium
Yeah.
that we opened
Yeah.
in November of 2024. It was a $32 million bond for us, which clearly anybody in our community could have gotten the petition remonstrance against, and the support was there. We didn't hear any negativity about that. So I think you need to, I wish our General Assembly would understand that voters have had an opportunity to say they didn't like something in the
Sure.
past. The problem is some communities are going to have an easier opportunity passing those than others without resistance. I think we were fortunate that we didn't have that. Really, the only time in my 26 years that happened was in 2007 when we looked at the potential of building a new high school. We lost a petition remonstrance at that time, which meant we had to wait a year. And then we came back with a project that was significantly different. Rather than having a new high school, the idea of having a new junior high school, adding on to the high school, both sides met on that. And our community said, that's right for us.
Okay.
I think similar things happen throughout the state that you get your key stakeholders together. Your community has an opportunity to say yay or nay to that.
So let's put a pin in the SCA 1 conversation for now. If we need to come back to it, we can. But with SCA 1 aside, what do you see as the next big challenge for K-12 in the state of Indiana for sure?
Well, it's different in every school corporation. I would tell you the school accountability piece has been put on pause for the last few years.
What do you mean by that?
Letter grades that we would get from
Right.
the state based on iRead performance, iLearn performance, and a few other factors. The state did just pass a new model for that will begin to be implemented here in the next year. Certainly, there are some challenges there with Indiana in particular. The number of students that are coming to us as with an English as a second language. That has grown for us in my tenure from about 30 students to over 200 students out of 4,200 kids. So we've gone from having no staff members dedicated to that to 3 full-time that work on that. Mount Vernon has numbers that are 2-3 times that. So that's a new challenge in terms of the expectation is once students have been in the country for a year, they're going to take those assessments.
Okay.
So that has been a little bit of a challenge. Because we are graded based on the performance that we have. And I would just kind of throw it out there that, I think the state of Indiana has done a great job on reading. We had fallen behind since COVID. I think the leaders at the state did a nice job of highlighting that throughout the state things needed to change. There are a lot of things we did to retool reading throughout the state. That's been something that 3 of our 4 elementary schools hit the 95% threshold on that last year. Hancock County is a place that does that really well. That is a huge challenge for many portions of the state. And I think that will be highlighted more now that this accountability model will come back.
Go back to the letter grade. I remember those being an A school or a B school. Like what does it actually do for you? Did it affect any financing, anything?
It doesn't affect financing, but it certainly affects public confidence in the work that you're doing.
Okay, good. But that's paused right now.
It has been, but that will start up again here in the next year.
So it's coming back up. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, good.
That is a challenge. Now, don't get me wrong. I think schools should be accountable for the learning that takes place. I do think we need to do a better job of explaining our story that there are some things that are a little bit more complicated today than they would have been prior to, let's just say 2020.
Yeah. What about AI?
Yeah.
I mean,
what about AI?
This is obviously a common buzzword, but at the same time, a common challenge. And I think similar to the onset of the internet, right, in the mid 90s to the early 2000s, coming on strong. Where I just remember I was in college when all of a sudden I had to submit stuff via email to a professor, like for the very first time. So it was like a whole new shift in how we were actually presenting information. I do feel like, while it's not the same, I feel like there's some similarities between the onset of artificial intelligence and what it's doing. So how are you guys as a school, both with students and teachers, as well as are there things that you're going to begin to use it for that will help be more efficient in your operation?
Yeah, there's 2 sides to that. I think we have done a poor job over the last couple of years of helping our students understand the ethical use
Hmm.
of AI. You don't want students to just type something into Chat GPT or Gemini and have that be their report. So I think we have not done a great job on that, but it is something that we are working on to do a better job of that. We want our kids, when they leave us, to make sure that they understand what colleges expect
Hmm.
in terms of that ethical use of that. So there's that side of it. The other side is we haven't trained our teachers to use it to help them be more efficient with their
Okay.
time, whether that's on the lesson planning side or on the scoring side. And there are things we've done on the light level where we've bought a few software pieces to help our staff with that, where you can easily pull lesson plans that overlap with Indian academic standards for a grade level and content area. But it's an area that I would say that we are still learning a lot with. It's ironic that we tried to hire somebody a year ago to support us with this. There just aren't that many people that are overly competent in that area. The good news is we have continued to keep that open. We did some interviews for that here in the last couple of weeks. I think we'll have somebody full time to support us in that next year. And again, it's two phases: help us support staff with
Hmm.
that and students,
Yeah.
particularly the junior high and high school. But yeah, it is certainly a dilemma for us. It can make life easier for us, but again, we want to make sure that students are giving credit where that credit needs to go if they've utilized that.
Yeah, I do see those challenges. I think what we're intrigued about with AI for us, and as we kind of think through our clientele and our partners like you guys, as we've done some projects with you, is where does AI help enhance that
Yep.
experience overall? And I for one see these new things come. I'm like, oh, well, they could do this or could do that, and I get super excited about it. And then you actually dive into it and find out that it's actually not very good yet. But I think it's smart of you to bring somebody on staff. I think the challenge that we're having is every time we have an idea and somebody kind of starts down that path, we quickly realize that within 18 months this could be obsolete. Like it's going to be creating its own things and doing its own pieces and parts. And so there are clearly advancements with building controls
Yep.
and security measures and different things. I mean, that's school security is obviously a kind of upfront
Well,
cost and
that's a
issue for.
perfect example
Yeah.
right there where we are upgrading our surveillance at the high school right now. The dollars are a little bit shocking to do that when you're talking about 150 cameras plus, but the way that you can give it a picture of a student and it can follow that student anywhere they
Find them.
go
Yeah.
in the building. So that AI technology can be very helpful to us.
Yeah.
You just have to pay for it.
I'm sure you do. But in a few years, it's going to be standard, right? And so
Yeah.
those that are on the front edge of that, I think, are important. So what else? What else? What are we missing today? Is there something else you wanted to kind of just build into about K-12 leadership? Anything else that's kind of on your heart and mind as you're kind of thinking through maybe the last stage of your career here as you kind of work towards retirement and then in the future?
Well, I would say the project we have, Amplify in Greenfield, which would be the Hancock County Career
Yeah.
Center, as well as the secondary piece, getting more of our students availability to the trades is important. Giving kids more opportunities for internships in our community through those partnerships has become much more important in the last couple of years than it's ever been. We're pretty fortunate in Hancock County that we have county council, county commissioners, RDC that put $50 million up
That's
for
right.
that facility. And obviously, you
Mhm.
played a huge role in facilitating that. It's not enough to just have the facility. Obviously, we've got to make sure that we're meeting the needs that our community has. So listening to what our community wants in terms of how we equip juniors and seniors in high school, as well as adults in terms of their workforce development.
So tell us a little bit more about that project. You mentioned it, Amplify Hancock, career training education, right?
Yep.
What does that mean though, for somebody who doesn't know?
Well, for us in Hancock County, we have 4 schools: Eastern Hancock, New Palestine, Mount Vernon, and Greenfield Central. We've sent our kids to 3 or 4 different career centers over the last 20, 30 years. We're going to be able to have 13 programs next year that'll be there at Amplify. That's not everything that we offer currently, so we will still send some kids to Walker Career
Okay.
Center or Newcastle, but it takes care of well over 80%
Okay.
of what we would like to address. We feel like having that right in our backyard we will be able to increase those numbers. In fact, we hired Stan Wilkinson to do that over the last year. He's been in our high schools, telling all of our kids about the programs, freshmen through juniors, and those numbers are dramatically increasing. So
Great.
that's a very positive thing, but that's half of Amplify. That's
Right.
the high school component. Ivy Tech will have a lot of courses that they're offering there, and working with some of the larger employers in our district, whether that be Hancock Health or Amazon, getting some of those players at the table to say what they need for their employees, working with Ivy Tech, it'll be a big game changer for us because we've not had a higher ed presence in Hancock County.
Right. What kind of programs? You mentioned juniors and seniors being the primary benefactors of this, so or beneficiaries, I should say, of this. So, what kind of programs are there? Are we talking building trades and nursing? Like what's
Yes, we've got a couple on the nursing side. We have some auto body and paint. We have an aviation course there. In terms of construction trades, and I believe we'll have electrical for the first time. So expanding that, we have HVAC, which we've hosted at Greenfield Central for the last 4 or 5 years. I know I'm missing a few things there, but there are 13 programs. That
and
we
the
will
intent
start.
really, remind me, the intent is to create job-ready individuals.
Get certification. I mean,
we know that some kids won't go to a 4-year
nor should
college,
they.
college or university, and we know that. Yeah, nor should some of them. Some of them might try to go, but shouldn't go. So can we get them ready to work sooner and become, productive members of society faster?
That's certainly the goal.
So yeah, it's a great project. If you haven't seen it, go look up Amplify Hancock. It's going to be an amazing project that's going to be done here, I think, in June or July. So we're moving in for our first semester of classes in August, right, or end of July. Right?
And we've had some amazing community partners who have stepped forward. Obviously, I mentioned the $50 million to construct the facility, but we're raising about $3 million for equipment and partners like the Community Foundation and Economic Development have stepped in with some really big dollars, as well as some of the companies within Hancock County who would like to see a workforce come out of that.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting project for sure. Well, hey, let's wrap up with one of my favorite things. And you said something earlier that I didn't really know we had in common, that you were a middle school basketball coach. Did I pick up on that?
You did.
Okay. I'm also done with my career of middle school basketball coaching. But yes, I did for the last 3 years, and you did too. You had a pretty big weekend last weekend as a basketball fan. So tell us a little bit about.
You're going to flex a little bit here.
I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you. Yeah.
Well, obviously, Greenfield Central is where my heart is. That's where I've been for the last 26 years. And if you were watching the Elite Eight game where UConn was playing against Duke, that last second shot was made by Braylon Mullins, who was a star at Greenfield Central for 4 years and Indiana's Mr. Basketball last year. So we had that.
Yeah.
And I also have Mount Vernon ties. I'm a Mount Vernon grad. And so for Mount Vernon High School to win the 4A state championship in basketball, something I never thought would happen.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome to watch both of those things. Well, Dr. Olin, thank you for being here today. Thanks for being on our podcast. Man, this has been awesome. We look forward to having you back sometime in the future to talk about more things. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening today. Thanks for clicking on this and diving in a little bit deeper. We hope you learned something today. And if you did, or you want more information, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to connect you with the right people to get you the answers that you need. But really help you leave with one thing in mind, is that our goal here at Veritas is to renew communities through great projects and great people. I think all of these conversations have shown that in some way or another. So thanks for listening today, and catch up with us next time.